Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha. Today is June the 24th, 2026. It's one day after the US Supreme Court decided the case of Blanche versus Lau in favor of the United States. Um, so the case of Blanche being the acting Attorney General of the United States, um, and versus Lau. Lau is he's the defendant. He went all the way to the Supreme Court. His name is Mok Choi Lau, and he had actually been charged with. He's a permanent resident, right? He's a permanent. He was a green card holder. Became a green card holder in 2007, and excuse me, a um, he'd been charged with a crime, counterfeiting crime, and at some point he traveled to China, and so when he came back, as a green card holder, the customs border patrol officers, instead of giving him, admitting him, giving him reentry, which is one of the benefits of being a green card holder, right? When you travel out of the country and you're coming back into the United States, you're not seeking readmission like somebody who's just entering on a temporary visa, right? Somebody who requires a visa and they're entering for the first time, right? Because you have a permanent resident, right? You're an LPR, lawful permanent resident, right? A green card holder. However, there is a caveat. There's something in immigration law that says that anybody who has committed an act of moral turpitude, right? That they can have their green card stripped from them, right? Their legal status can be stripped, and they can be put in deportation proceedings. However, the thing is that typically anybody who is in deportation proceedings has an opportunity to go before an immigration judge to in their own defense, and the government still has the burden of proving by clear and convincing evidence that that person is guilty of this crime, of an act of that is an act of moral turpitude. However, what the Supreme Court did yesterday was basically say that just having arrest charges, right, just being charged with a crime, and even not having conviction, somebody can be a green card holder who has not been convicted, they've not had their trial, but there's a charge against them, who travels overseas and then wants to come back. The customs border patrol officer can make the decision, right, without clear and convincing evidence, to put that person into deportation proceedings as a parolee, right? A parolee, basically, instead of giving them readmission status as a green card holder, because they have charges against them, once they know that they have charges against them without conviction, so they don't have clear and convincing evidence, because anybody charged in America under the rule of law, under our legal standard, you're still innocent until proven guilty. But what the Supreme Court did is, the custom border patrol officer, they don't need a conviction. All they have to see is charges, and they can put that person, instead of granting them readmission, they put them in parole status. They parole them into deportation proceedings, right? And bypass, the the opportunity or the rights of the green card holder to be before an immigration judge and to prove his case. So they just go take them from from the airport or whatever, the border, and parole them into deportation proceedings. So it does many terrible things for our laws. It just throws out that standard of innocent until proven guilty, especially since we know that in the United States, a lot of our law enforcement officers, many times they file false charges. citizens and even non-citizens are subject to false arrests. And this law just gives incentive to cops, right? Many of them that are crooked to just file false arrests against people that they know speak with an accent, because they might be green card holders and not U.S. citizens, right? Like myself, I'm an American citizen, right? But they can just file false arrests, hoping that they'll be immediately be in deportation proceedings without without having their day in court to prove their innocence. So once they're making a charge similar to a conviction, right? So they're basically issuing a bill of attainder, which is illegal. It's unconstitutional in our laws. They're using a bill of attainder for people because of their immigration status, right? And typically a green card holder has a lot of protection. Now, something that the Supreme Court did not take into consideration, right? Because it's now empowered the Border Patrol officers to make knee-jerk decisions, and it's an incentive for our cops, for many cops, road cops, to file false charges against Americans. They already do. I am a victim of a false arrest, right? But I'm an American citizen, so it doesn't do anything, right? I get to file a lawsuit against the Montgomery County Police that filed false charges of false arrest against me in my home, right? So I know they're crooked because of what they did. I've been their victim. I've been the victim of hate crime by Montgomery County Police. I've been a victim of being targeted and a swatting. They engineered a swatting against me. I've done videos explaining what a swatting is. So I can only imagine what green card holders who don't have the protection of being U.S. citizens like I do. I'm an American citizen, but I know there's a contingent of people who will always see me as a foreigner or not being an American citizen. It doesn't sink into their heads that, well, I'm an American citizen, they can't do anything about it. And so they will take their shots. So I my heart really bleeds for green card holders. I'm not in support of any criminal like becoming a citizen or violating our laws. No, that's not what it is. The thing is, we have a legal standard that everybody's innocent until proven guilty. And Blanche versus Lau, which was decided yesterday by the Supreme Court, basically is impugning it, right? It's impugning it for a category of people, right? Green card holders. Ultimately, it's going to affect citizens and everybody, right? As Dr. Martin Luther King said to have said, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, right? So this is going to have a domino effect. It's going to have a chain reaction. It's going to have ramifications that ultimately impugn on the rights of citizens as in being innocent until proven guilty. Now, the other big picture aspect that the Supreme Court clearly didn't consider: green card holders have access to loans, mortgages, student loans. So imagine somebody who they have charges against them, right? And they are waiting to defend their charges, but they travel out and they want to come back in, and the Border Patrol officer, instead of giving them the readmission of green card status, paroles them because of this charge, paroles them into deportation proceedings, into removals, and removes them. Basically, when they parole you into deportation proceedings, it downgrades your green card. It strips you of your green card, right? So it's like you're just a temporary guest, a temporary visitor. So consider that a green card holder who has student loans that they've promised to repay, now you're freeing them of paying those student loans. Student loans go to as high as 300,000, 400,000, right? Now burdening the American taxpayer, right, of those of these exorbitant loans. So the American taxpayer is now going to be forced to foot the bill, right, to repay the student loans, that this green card holder that has been denied the opportunity to prove, you know, their innocence in a court of law, like everybody in America has a right, you know, according to the Sixth Amendment, right? They've been basically violating their due process laws, their Fifth Amendment due process laws. That's what the government is doing. So it's going to be exorbitant. It's going to be very costly. It's going to harm the economy. So these are big picture issues, ramifications that the Supreme Court clearly has not considered, you know, and it's very unfortunate. In any event, I'll speak more about the case of Blanche versus Lau, because it's kind of interesting. There are many other issues as well that are going on. I saw that recently as well, a U.S. Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia sided with the government, that the government, you know, in the area of expedited removals, deportations of, you know, of people, you know, it's the government's just putting in deportation proceedings, typically without having to prove that the deportee, intended deportee, has been a resident of the United States for 2 years, for a continuous period of 2 years. So there's a lot going on. I'll do another video discussing these immigration cases. Again, you know, my heart bleeds for green card holders, for F1 visa students, people who are law-abiding, who are well-meaning. They're here in America with a good faith, and, you know, they believe in the greatness of America. That's why they're here. But now they're being targeted because we have adverse immigration policies. And, you know, with respect to immigration, are these the worst of times for immigrants? No, in our history we've had, you know, more terrible periods. So we see that we're going back and forth since 1965 under the Immigration and Nationality Act, under President Lyndon B. Johnson. We made, you know, tremendous progress, but now we're seeing what's called activism, right? A revision to a past that was really pernicious and harmful. In any event, my name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'll keep you posted. Thank you.